Hello and welcome back to If You Know Your History with me, Jonny Owen, and my dear friend...
Fellow who's just drinking his tea and then forgot that we'd started, Mark Webster.
Mark Webster. We are, of course, on our odyssey, our epic odyssey of Sir Alex Ferguson.
Aren't
Alexander,
we, though?
I know, number 3. And it's been very, very popular. And I think people love the fact that we're really going in so deep to Fergie's psychology, his life, his career, everything. Let's really get into the weeds of the man.
And even if you've started with Man United, who would blame you? You know, it's a massive part of his life. The great thing about what we're learning as we talk about Ferguson is we know why the Ferguson that everyone knows exists.
Yes.
He's been built he's been constructed in the way that the ships that he grew up next to were constructed back home in Govan when he was a little kid, because he takes every part of his life, the successes and the failures, and makes it the Ferguson that we know, the Sir Alex that we know.
49 trophies, Mark.
Nuts.
49. I mean, come on.
What, you mean he didn't get 50?
I mean, it is extraordinary, you know. I mean, we'll come to the Manchester United stuff, but even at Aberdeen, there's 11 trophies there with Aberdeen, 3 titles, 4 cups, 1 League Cup, the European Cup Winners' Cup, the European Super Cup. You know, it's like, come on. I mean, it's interesting because we are going to do some episodes on Bob Paisley, and we should, because people are pointing out Bob Paisley was
completely
3 European Cups, 6 titles,
and arguably kind of like the forgotten man when you're in the talk about the greats.
We should do it, but now they've started counting European Super Cups because it was the slight Achilles heel, really. We've quite Greek on this. We've had the sword of Damocles. We've had, was it sword of...
Oh, Damocles hanging over your head, son.
So we've had a bit of that. All we need is a Gregorian knot, and we're there. And we just mentioned the Odyssey, bit of Homer. So we've been very sort of like Greek mythology over this, because it is a story.
One of the finest disco records ever made. So, but probably not the point you were making.
No, so it is almost like a Greek epic, this story. But like, you know, if you think about all the stuff that he's won, even if people will say, well, in Europe, and you kind of understand it because, you know, he only won 2 Champions Leagues over all that time, still not bad. But you go, which British manager has won the most European trophies? And it's Sir Alex Ferguson.
Yes.
Because he won 2 European Cup Winners' Cups and 2 Super Cups as well. So he did win 6, which is no bad. You know, so, so you're going, okay. I'm talking about one of those European Cup Winners' Cups, because this is really what I believe. This is the moment where he posted himself to the world, really, that this was a once-in-a-generation managerial talent.
Yeah.
We've all grown up and we all understand the great tradition and history of Scottish managers. You know, we've spoken about it, you know, and the 3 most famous are without doubt Sir Matt Busby, Bill Shankly and Jock Stein. You know, that's just a fact. But Ferguson is very much almost like the child of the 3 of them.
Yeah.
I think he takes aspects of the 3. He knows them all. He's met them all. He spent lots of time with, certainly Jock Stein. He was assistant at Scotland. He spends time with Sir Matt Busby, who's an older gentleman by the time he gets to Manchester United, but he gives him some invaluable advice, he tells him, and he understands the tradition of Manchester United when he goes there. But Ferguson is now sort of embodying everything in Scottish history, social history-wise and football history-wise, and personifying it.
If 4 kings had taken gifts to the baby Jesus that day, that fateful day, he'd have been in your documentary,
well, he was Jesus.
Which becomes 3
He's
kings.
Jesus in the story.
You give him Jesus, are you?
Yeah, well,
of course, he's the younger one.
He's
in the manger.
And they're giving him all the stuff which he takes.
He's got the gold, he's got the cups and the myrrh.
Exactly.
Yes.
So he's kind of like, he's almost like that star is over him, really, that he's going to become this
I'm glad we established where he was in the nativity play of football managers.
He's baby Jesus.
Of course he is. I wonder who's the donkey. Still, that's for another episode.
So he's finally Aberdeen. He's winning titles. 1980s, he's winning Scottish Cups. Like I said, it's like 11 trophies. But you know, he's the big moment. He wins the European Cup Winners' Cup in 1983.
So
we need to talk
memorable.
about this because we want to, and everybody again, you know, talking to our audience will be nodding to this. When British teams were competing in Europe, we used to support the British teams when we were kids.
And
that was just a fact.
It's such and I think as well, more pointedly, and this is the same conversation that I think you would have about Nottingham Forest, when that particularly resonated, I think, on a kind of grand scale, is it when it wasn't an obvious team.
No.
When there was an element of an underdog side going out representing our islands.
Yes.
It kind of, I think the fascination and the camaraderie was stronger.
Yes.
And Aberdeen definitely fall in that category, don't
Yes.
they?
Do you think it's something to do with that? I mean, I'm not saying this, as a kind of like, as a little Englander here, as you call them, but because the teams were in those days tended to be British players. Do you think there was something in that it was countries versus countries rather than these international teams that sort of like are made up of, which is brilliant and a very different world. But the fact that these boys were all Scots.
I don't. The answer is I don't know. Based on the fact, of course, that in real time you wouldn't have put it in perspective, would you? You wouldn't say, "I like this team because in a few years' time, it's going to be multi-nations playing everywhere."
Yeah.
So it's difficult to say in that sense. But when you look back on it and you look at the sense of this idea of a smaller group of individuals, sort of Rorke's drift moment, you know, in which you're kind of thinking to yourself, "Wow." This little band of brothers did something exceptional beyond what you think they were capable of. Yeah. It does give you the Cinderella fairy tale story part of it.
Merthyr Tydfil, yay!
Well in, my
finally.
son!
But when they played Atalanta and beat them in 1987, when I was there, that was a team of all Valley boys, basically.
Right, there you go.
Lads who literally were working in coal foundries and, they were tarmackers and all sorts. So there was something in the fact that they were very much from our little community, really.
And to answer your question, when West Ham won whatever that cup was called that we won 2 seasons ago, and we have got
Conference Cup,
the Conference Cup that was our players drawn from all over the world. I didn't care that they weren't from E13.
So there we are.
So the answer to the question is
doesn't matter.
But it still remains the fact that a Scottish manager and a bunch of Scottish players. Took on the glamour of Europe and won.
Well, there's 2 games in particular. I mean, it's astonishing because they had to go through a preliminary round as well. People forget this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they really
lots
had
of football.
Yes, they had to play lots of football. They are, without a shadow of a doubt, the best team in Scotland at this point by quite a distance. They're getting into Europe. They are sort of chastised a little bit by Liverpool after they win the league and well beaten there. And Ferguson again goes away and licks his wounds and thinks, right, we're not going to be that naive again. We're going to play European football in a very specific way. So he's always learning and he's always going, okay, I need to be better. I need to be better. I need to be better. And there's a great story when he goes to Liverpool and he comes down. He's doing something and he's like, right, he's down scouting the game before he goes to Anfield. I think they made him lose 4-0. And Shankly's there and he clocks him and he goes, how you doing, son? And he goes, not too bad. He goes, you're doing a bit of scouting, He goes, yeah, well, they all try that. Fergie said I'm a bit like admonished by it. Now, don't even bother.
That's such a smart retort, isn't it? Because basically, do you carry on like an idiot, like all the other idiots do? Or do you skulk away because that's what he's made you do? Yeah. There's no real good, there's not a great response to that,
Maybe there's the genesis of the great rivalry he gets with Liverpool in the years. But that European Cup Winners' Cup campaign is astonishing because they're very much on our radar. Me and Mark talk about this, the British radar. People are talking about them straight away. They've gone to Bayern Munich and they've got a 0-0 draw, which in those days was pretty good in European football. A 1-1 draw was massive because it was the away goal. And the away goal rule was, because might have people that understand it, was the away goal counted double. So if you drew 0-0 at home but drew 1-1 away, you went through because you'd scored away. So they've gone to Bayern Munich and they've got 0-0. They think this is all right. And on the 16th of March, 1983, they famously bring them back to Pittodrie in Aberdeen. And one of those dark sort of like Scottish nights, they play Bayern Munich and Bayern Munich are 2-1 up. So they're going out. Yep. And also, even if they draw, they're going out.
That's right, because the away, all of a sudden, the away goal bubble. Yeah.
And they scored 2 goals in a few minutes in the late 70s sort of minutes, 77 and 78. And they go through 3-2. They beat Bayern Munich. They knocked Bayern Munich out on a famous night in Pittodrie. A lot of people say the greatest night in the history of Aberdeen Football Club at that ground. Everybody still talks about it. So they have really arrived now to knock out, arguably with another team called Real Madrid, who have a little bit of European pedigree as well. We're also in the competition. They are the 2 favourites to win the competition. But here's Aberdeen, and they've just knocked out Bayern Munich, and people are going, here we go. Who are this team here? Anyway, they get to the final, and of course they draw in the final Real Madrid, who are still the most famous team in the history of football, domestic team, won the most European titles by quite a distance, playing all white. This is the most...
And this is David and Goliath. There's no 2 ways about it.
Let's build this up the way, because we can't build it up enough, but we'll try. Yes. They are playing Real Madrid, and they are managed by their greatest ever player.
Yeah.
Alfredo Di Stefano.
So
the manager of Real Madrid is Alfredo Di Stefano.
They're in their pomp. And of course, it isn't a sort of second-rate version of Real Madrid. They're not in a bit of a slump at this particular stage.
No.
They're exactly where they're meant to be because of the way that they're still playing.
Yes. So Real Madrid are in the final, and they're playing them at Gothenburg's ground in Gothenburg. And this is amazing stuff where we were all just talking about where I can remember the whole build-up for it. On the news, there's footage of fans leaving ferries, going across the North Sea, red and white, and they're singing, "Here we go." And it's still on YouTube and things like that. It's an amazing. There's like this the whole of the northeast of Scotland is bedecked and on their way
make a good point there, John.
to Sweden.
It's news.
Yeah.
This isn't, it's not like the football world has kind of bought into this at this stage. Now all of a sudden this is making national news.
Yes.
This Scottish minnow is going into the pool of the shark.
Absolutely. And it's no coincidence that this happened, because Sir Alex Ferguson is now really starting to get into his prime really as a football manager. Gordon Strachan, who I've been lucky enough to meet and spend time with at the Bilbao Football Festival, lovely fella. He said to me, "Jonny, I just didn't realise how far ahead of his time he was." He said he had us on things like bananas. He said we didn't seen one. He's an Edinburgh boy. He said he understood about nutrition. He said the idea that sort of Wenger came in and invented all was nonsense. He said he used to put us in the North Sea if we had injuries and make us start like cryogenics. He said,
not as punishment.
Water. Yeah.
Because of course, yes, you're right. I mean, if you're Marky Wahlberg and you look at his videos, he's got a £20 million tub where he stands in freezing cold water.
It's a big thing now.
The North Sea will do it for you
Absolutely.
just as well.
They used to train on the beach. They'd play very progressive football. And again, Gordon was really interested on the beach. He said, we were on the beach. He said, we'll practice on the beach, or the Brazilian teams and all the rest. He said, there was all these things happening.
It's almost like the coast of Scotland gives you a certain resilience, John, isn't it?
Exactly.
I don't know what it is.
Makes you tough, yeah. So, where did Fergie come from? So he's born in Glasgow, which is like the epicenter, the crucible of football. He's surrounded by great players and great managers. He's got a sense of a will of iron. He's a young sort of apprentice. He has to fight through adversity to become a professional footballer. He loses, he ends up running pubs in the roughest parts of Glasgow. He fights through that. He has to fight to become a professional manager. Then when he finally becomes a professional manager, he gets sacked and he ends up in Aberdeen. And it's no coincidence that Aberdeen have a rod of iron going through them, which is transferred from their manager. This is a team built in his image. And like we said, all those great players that I've reeled off in the previous episode, Alec McLeish, Willie Miller, Gordon Strachan, Mark McGee, these are Scottish internationals, big players. They're the best team in Scotland. And now they've got Real Madrid. Here's the acid test. And like the reverse of the Vikings, there's people leaving Scotland heading to Scandinavia en masse.
And it's about time, isn't it? Yes.
And they're doing and I'm a kid in South Wales watching this on a big wooden red diffusion box. Mark's in London. We all had this quick conversation, and we were, it's a big deal, this final. We were all watching it.
Yeah, as I say,
kids.
If you don't like football, you've just watched it on the news as well, so you also know.
You're very aware of it. It's the big story of the time that this team in Scotland have got and are playing the mighty Real Madrid. The famous white kit on this filthy night in Sweden.
To be fair, this is the bit that I kind of remember, is that you were looking at a ground in conditions and with fans that implied home game. For Aberdeen.
It did, yeah.
It had that vibe about it.
It did, and also, in those days, we spoke about it for the Celtic final in '67. Not a lot of foreign fans travelled then.
No.
I don't know what that was, and it's changed massively now. And I noticed it in the 1980 European Cup final when Forest played Hamburg. The Hamburg end was half full. This was a European Cup final.
Yeah.
Forest end heaving, half full. Same the year before, Malmo, a few there. So at this point, British teams, especially like the English and the Scots, oh my God, the Tartan Army, they're travelling in their thousands to this game.
Yes.
And this is a trek, and there's great stories I read doing the research. This like all-night discos on this ferry coming across. They're already on the time of their life. They haven't even got there yet. Do you know what I mean?
I DJ'd on an all-night ferry. I tell you what the problem with the experience was, not so much the DJing and the worry that surely the boat's going to rock about and might ruin my records. It was more that I was advised that the best way to combat seasickness is to eat a big meal before you do. So I ate a big meal and then obviously started socialising. It was quite hard work. And then that's the moment you realise that going down a line on your bunk is still on the ship. And it's still moving, so you literally can't go and hide anywhere. And I know that I can distinctly remember skulking off saying, I'm done here. That's it. I'm going to go to my room, lie down, and it's all over. But no, you're just lying down in the same situation. It didn't fit me.
But once I caught the ferry across from Holyhead to Dublin. I used to catch it quite regularly.
Yeah.
And I was going across once, and it was a particularly rough journey. I kind of got used to it by then. I was seeing a girl over there. And I'm on there, and I thought, I got the cinema. Because it's a 3-hour cross, and I live this cinema, and I think I'm the only person in the cinema. And all I got is it's like an early hours cross. You know the curtains that open the thing.
Yeah.
I can remember the curtains were so tilted, so they were covering half the screen. I'm thinking it's a bit rough out there.
The curtains were at 45 degrees.
And I'm trying to watch Pretty Woman or whatever it was on, and I'm going, I can't watch this. It's the curtains that sort of. So that's the kind of sort of crossing.
Why are all the cars going uphill?
Anyway,
we got to go on a ferry again.
I'm
all romantic about this now.
Let's
it can't be as bad as it was all those years ago. Me and you got to get on a ferry soon.
We're going to arrive on a ferry. And in the second half of this is Fergie 3, end of part 1. We're going to tell you about this incredible final and what happened. And we're going to ask a question here. Who scored the winning goal for Aberdeen to beat Real Madrid in the European Cup Winners' Cup
question,
final?
because no wonder about the spoilers here. I only went and won it.
Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Fergie 3.
Yes, you're correct. The parts are now in front.
Yes.
But Fergie, we know with him, he's got a bit of a winning mentality.
Yes, he's going to be
might
back
come out on top. He might come out on top at the end of this.
That's a very, very good point. We asked the question, and we'll talk about the game. Who scored the winning goal for Aberdeen against Real Madrid?
What? And in your career, if you're that guy whose name is
John Hewitt.
John Hewitt scores the goal. You are now writ large, aren't you, in a city's history? But as you pointed out, John Hewitt probably could have gone through his footballing life not being known by most football fans.
And now,
but he is now in a game which is being watched. It felt like watched by everybody.
And it was an extra time, and it was a magnificent goal as well.
Yes, that's true.
You know what I mean? It was just one of those goals on a wet night, and you just thought, this is come on. I remember being a kid, and everybody in the whole living room watching it, both my brothers, my father, my grandfather, just leaping in the air because Aberdeen had beaten the mighty Real Madrid.
Yeah, look at the drama. I mean, an extra time winner as well. It had the lot, because we didn't get a lot of football in that sense in those days.
Yeah.
So to then have a great game and extra time was such a thing.
It was incredible. And interestingly enough, before the game, again, John Jockstein looms into view on this, because as I said, the manager of Real Madrid was Alfredo Di Stefano.
Yes.
Probably at that point, one of the most famous footballers still, really, that's ever lived.
Football player and their manager. I mean, in terms of like both things, untoppable at that stage.
The most famous person connected to Real Madrid ever.
Yeah.
No two ways about it. And was probably the most famous football club ever.
Yeah.
So he's the manager of Real Madrid. Alex Ferguson is the manager of Aberdeen. And he says to Jockstein, and we've spoken about this in previous episodes, he says, any tips you can give me? Because obviously Steen had won a European Cup, and he'd been up against the great Herrera.
Right.
We've done a program on who was the great football manager of the time, Inter Milan. Very tough team to beat, the great team in Europe.
Manager for literally ever.
Yes, exactly. So Steen says, and what I did was, he said, before the game, I brought him a present. Now, I think it might have been either a bottle of whiskey or wine, something, as if to say, I'm just glad to be here. This is for you. I just, I know the pecking order of this. You're Herrera. I'm just a fella from Scotland with a team that's got there. Nobody's heard of Celtic. It's the first time we've ever been in the European Cup, and to make a final, a bit of a fluke. And he said, I could see in his eyes, he was like, oh, bless him.
Yeah.
In the nicest way. And Fergie went, I did the same with Di Stefano. Before the game, I found him out. He said, I give him this thing.
Absolute sucker punch. I love it.
I know.
I mean,
he's wily Scots.
Fancy falling for that one, that old one. So that's amazing.
Fergie does the same with Di Stefano, and he said, I really thought that's a really good idea, Jock, Mr. Steen. He did the same thing, and it kind of just lulled, Real Madrid into this feeling, and there was a filthy night, and it's raining, and Aberdeen had got more fans here, and this is a crack Aberdeen team, a really good side. They like to be ruling Scottish football. They winning titles, winning cups. They got this manager who's absolutely, young, hungry, and wants it, and they win the match. Man.
They win the match, and we talk about this, as you say, where it resonates is that it's kind of a lot of living memory for us, and I'm going to guess a lot of people that are listening to this as well. And the person who sticks out for me is Willie Miller.
Yeah.
Willie Miller, I can picture in my mind's eye as the man who runs that game. And he's amazing in the sense where, and there were Liverpool players a little bit like this. You kind of wonder whether there's a parallel version of Willie Miller who would have been an okay footballer, who would have done okay with football in Scotland, in his native country, and had a lovely career and got a nice house and a nice car and all that kind of business. But him with Ferguson took him to another level, added another dimension, and he dominated that game.
Yeah, he was fabulous. And he talks, I watched the documentary about him, the Icon series on BBC iPlayer. It's worth watching. It's done by BBC Scotland. Really good series. And they do one on Willie Miller.
Yeah.
And it's great. He talks about that. He talks about Fergie changing his life, changing Aberdeen, the city, talks about all that. And also that they bumped up against each other at the start, and it takes a bit of working out. And again, all these things. That we all think now, Fergie turns up at Man United and turns them into this amazing team. And we'll come to that. This doesn't happen. There's always a battle at the start, or there's things that need smoothing out constantly. And Fergie's constantly battling with all this and learning from it, I think. All Strachan, he later falls out in Strachan and they make up. But all the players talk about, we were all young alpha males, which footballers invariably have to be to get to be where they are, battling against the ultimate sort of silverback really who comes in and goes, look, lads, if you follow me and knuckle down and listen to me, I promise you'll be successful, which is the story of his whole career after that.
And of course, it's okay being that guy, but you've got to be successful at being that guy.
Yeah.
Without the success, these are empty words.
Absolutely.
But of course, with Ferguson, I think anyone who didn't know that or didn't notice that or thought that wasn't the case, they've found out to their chagrin that they should have just abided by his words.
But he says this great thing. He's certainly at Aberdeen and then later Manchester United, where he wins all these trophies. The first trophy, he notices what players have a taste for it.
Right.
He says, there's a barrier broken. Steen again talks about it with Celtic. Once we won our first Scottish Cup, 65, I think it was. No, he's like, they want this now. They want this.
Yeah, because of course,
Clough talks about it. Clough talks about it.
Clough, and Clough was the same. Clough was a man who took footballers that might have been considered okay and turns them into these kind of serial winners.
Yes.
And Willie Miller's this conversation again as well probably could have happily carried on doing okay with Aberdeen.
Yes.
But no.
Yeah.
We're now achieving. I now am a better player because of this man, and now I want to carry on being better.
Yes,
and that's what you get with Ferguson in charge.
Famously, at the time, him and McLeish, they keep Alan Hansen up the Scottish team a lot of the time. Who's done
that's the other thing. Exactly, there's the thing. They're now in the blue shirts, aren't they? And in charge of things.
This is how we all remember them. And they win this European Cup and this Cup, and this is huge for Scotland. Obviously, they won European trophies, but this is one they win in the 80s. Now they used to win them in the 60s and with Rangers in the 70s, but this is a big deal. And Dundee United famously make a semi-final of a European Cup. They get knocked out by AS Roma, who lose to Liverpool in the final. But there's a lot said about what the referee was like in the semi-final. So both these clubs are doing. But Dundee United. What a story that is. I don't think they've ever lost to Barcelona in a domestic football match. Dundee United, they even beat them out in the Nou Camp. People forget this. These teams were two of the best teams in Europe at this point. You
just want them to get through, don't you?
And
then Barcelona, and they get pulled out there in Barcelona's group. That's what I want to see happen. That's all I want now in my football life.
Well, then the following year Aberdeen. That's where they got the 2 stars above their very famous badge. Got a great badge, by the way. That sort of A is the shape of the ball in it, and the shape of the net, isn't it?
It's a relatively contemporary one, but man, it's a sharp. It's kind of got that sort of like Soviet Union graphic feel about it.
It's a bit like Forest's
great.
one, which they changed in the 70s, the very famous little tree and the squiggles, which represent the Trent. It's become iconic because the teams that played in it became brilliant football teams.
Yeah, it kind of helps.
Yeah, my mate always says that. Isn't it funny if everybody's favourite top of the team is when they do really well in it?
They get out of town, really.
But they win the following year, they win the European Super Cup. They beat a really good Hamburg team where, Kevin Keegan's been. They've won the European Cup and they win that. So he's won the European Super Cup in 83. 1984, Mark, he does the double with Aberdeen. He's dominating Scottish football. He's winning an OBE. He's offered the Rangers job. He's offered the Arsenal job at this time. All these teams are circling around him. There's a really famous one where they win the Scottish Cup. I can't remember quite what it is, but he's on the pitch. If you can, please just spend 2 minutes to YouTube it. So they've won the Scottish Cup, Aberdeen. And they go up to Ferguson, and then the fans are going crackers behind, and the team are running round, and they go, disgrace. We were a disgrace today. And I think he mentions Willie Miller. We only won it because of Willie Miller, maybe McLeish, because of them boys that said about we were an absolute disgrace. And he does this thing where he goes, later in life, he goes, I was so rabid at that point for success, but to win, in a certain way, that he went, I was wrong because
he didn't let him have the moment.
Exactly, all the players.
Yeah.
But I would say to him now, I'd go, no, that's you. Don't change.
No.
That was the fuel.
Oh, I mean, which is entirely the point. There would no be any point in him lying to himself about it.
Yeah.
His reaction is natural.
It's
That's
natural.
the man.
It's Ferguson because I think Aberdeen are even realising at this point he's almost like too big for them. He's winning titles and doubles. He's appointed he's on the board. He's a director at this point.
That could be almost the most significant part of that reaction on the field of play. Is that now he's feeling a little bit cramped.
I agree.
So all he's got left now is to lash out at the manner in which they've been successful.
That's a great point. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
It's a great point. He's feeling slightly constrained maybe for the first time because this is what happens. He's the assistant manager to Jock Stein at this point at Scotland. So Stein has come back to manage Scotland. He's taken him to the 82 World Cup. They got knocked out in the famous game against Brazil. Remember the toe poke?
That's right.
David Neary. Dundee
30 yards, by the way.
A Dundee United player, David Neary. And they get knocked out by the brilliant Brazil team, the greatest team never to win the World Cup, the team of Zico, Ede, we all know the story. And then he's helping Stein try to get Scotland to the 1986 World Cup, which is in Mexico. And they're in the same group as a very, very good Wales team. Wales famously beat them at Hampden Park. Hughes and Rush, Hansen calls it the greatest attacking display he's ever seen.
Yeah, they kind of did all right.
I mean, as a 9 and 10, you see dream 9 and 10, innit?
Play them too.
Yeah, exactly. So Wales then, I was at the game, Wales played them at Ninian Park in 1985, an awful night in the sense of for everybody involved. Wales draw 1-1.
Yeah.
We don't go through because we drew with Iceland at home. Classic Wales. There's a floodlight failure. We were 2-0 up. I was there. Anyway, there's all this. It's so Welsh football.
Was it, by the way, any of those shirts on your wonderful T-shirt?
That one.
That one there.
That one. So that shirt there, that's Wales played Scotland.
What? That one's kind of sad looking for me now, though, because of the Iceland thing.
I know. So I was there. I was there that night against Iceland. We were 2-0 up, and the floodlights went at the Vetch. And by the time they come back on, we drew 2-2. Scotland. It's a true story.
That implies, by the way, which is funny, is the floodlights go off, but they carry on playing. And by the time the lights come back on again, they scored
2 goals.
What happened?
What happened there?
Football was different in those days, John.
The referee was from East Germany. He was like, "That's the way it is. Sorry, lads."
That's how we do it over there.
And then Scotland go to Iceland, and I think Jim Leighton either saves a penalty in the last minute or they score one. Something happens. Anyway, everything goes against us, but we've got to win the last game. And we go 1-0 up. I'm there. Mark Hughes scores. Very good Wales team. Joey Jones, Mickey Thomas, Ian Rush, Kevin Ratcliffe. I mean, really good. Robbie James, Southall in goals. Really good Wales team. We're thinking we're going to make it. And the last thing Jock Stein does before he passes away, bless him, on the side of the pitch, is he puts Davy Cooper on as a substitute, and Davy Cooper scores a penalty. And we draw 1-1. But Jock Stein passes away on the night.
Horrible. Well, do you know what? It's the kind of, perhaps it's the way that to kind of, you're a man like Jock Stein and you die on the touchline.
It's dreadful. But put yourself in the subject of these wonderful podcasts we're doing, but I love talking about it. So this man dies next to you at the side of a football pitch.
Yes.
Right? Who you're his assistant manager of Scotland for, who's given you this incredible advice.
Who basically started your career as a manager by saying, take the St Mirren job and go and sit the stand on the ground and take the club. Yeah.
And then he gives him the advice before the European Cup Winners' Cup final. So this is a big
impact.
The impact on Ferguson is huge.
Yeah.
He then is because he's assistant. He has to take Scotland to the Mexico World Cup. It's actually they have to win a playoff as well. I think they beat Australia. He wins that. He gets into the World Cup, but he's gone there, and I think at this point, Scotland, the Scottish national team and Scotland, it's just
it's not there, is it?
He wants to reach outside, because he's offered the job. He doesn't want to take it. They have a poor World Cup. It's not that they have a poor World Cup because I don't think they lose, do they? But they draw the games. There's a real boring game against Uruguay. Uruguay kicked them all over the park. Basically.
It was a strangely lowbrow, sort of like underwhelming affair. They kind of to watch them.
It was almost like they sort of petered out. They went out with a whimper, as the saying goes.
And do you know what? Perhaps the fact that you'd lost arguably the greatest football manager in the world also in Scotland had died.
My mate,
perhaps they're still there.
It was very sad. But also my mate said as well, she was probably a bit bitter of the fact they knocked us out. He said they had those shorts with a blue band to the middle.
Yes.
He said it looked like a suspender girdle belt. And when he said it, I could never get out of my mind.
It's one way of keeping your socks up.
So they kind of And he a lot of people were quite shocked by it. He kind of went, I don't want a job. And then people were like, oh, God, this is the national job, the pinnacle really because what had happened was, and this is going to get us to, the fascinating moment. He sounded out for the Manchester United job. Ron Atkinson is there, right? Ron Atkinson has gone there.
And Ron Atkinson is teetering at this stage. They've
had a really bad start to the season. Now, Ron's gone there, and it's a very different place that people understand now. They haven't won the title since 1967. This is 1987, so it's 20 years. They've won a few FA Cups. Tommy Docherty's been there. Dave Sexton's been there. Ron Atkinson's won 2 FA Cups. But there's a feeling that they have to win the title if you're Manchester United.
Yeah.
A bit like Liverpool have had in the last 20 years, and they've done it. There's going to be the feel. Manchester United where they are now, I mean, it's starting, but it's going to be, and now we're talking about him going there, there's a feeling you've got to win a title at some point in the next 5
Yeah,
10
because
years.
as we know in Manchester United, there's only so long you can't be Manchester United, is the point about them, isn't it? It's apparent in the current regime. The current era is exactly that problem.
It's a very good point. And I think the thing is that he's gone there and he's gone, okay, it's a good club, it's a big club. He's taken Archie Knox with him, who's his assistant at Aberdeen. And there's a great story. They go to this semi-detached house. Imagine this now, together. And Archie Knox has agreed. He's left Aberdeen on very good terms. The people love him there. They still do, the city. So there's not this, he hasn't left under a bit of a cloud like what happened in St Mirren. It's all very amicable. I think they've realised.
Again, we can now part ways.
We've kissed the sky.
We've done enough.
We've kissed the sky with you. Thank you for this forevermore. You've changed the whole nature of Aberdeen's history. Fantastic. And he goes to Manchester. And I always remember him saying, it was quite rainy, it was quite grey. He ends up in the semi-detached and he's sharing it with Archie Knox, but Archie Knox has to stay in Scotland because there's a transitionary period and he's kind of agreed to sort of do this transition. And Fergie's a bit lonely. He goes to Manchester and he's a bit like, oh God, what have I done here? He's left where he's on the board at Aberdeen. He's a god for life. And he's gone to Manchester. And of course, he goes in Manchester United and they've got a famous team. They've got Brian Robson's there. Paul McGrath is there. Good team. But there's a drinking culture. Right,
so number one side, but so he's got the beating heart of the team, and he's got immediately to put his foot down on McGrath, Robson, and Whiteside.
Yes.
Whiteside's kind of the younger man coming through.
Yeah.
The other two are absolute solid tent poles at that club at that particular
stage. Brilliant players.
And, of course, that good as well.
And interestingly enough, I know I often say this, but McGrath goes on and has a brilliant sort of Indian summer of a
Absolutely,
with Aston Villa.
Absolutely,
look after him and
even with one leg.
Yes.
Incredible
brilliant
footballer.
player. Brian Robson, we'll talk about this, he resurrects him and sort of puts him at the centre and he ends up winning titles and all those kind of things. But don't forget what a talisman Robson was for Manchester United
and
in the 80s.
And
his country.
Yeah.
He was the best player in England possibly at that point. Mark Hughes is gone. He's been sold to Barcelona, but he's ended up at Bayern Munich. But he's scoring goals there. And he comes in and he's kind of realised very quickly that it's not the club that it should be. There's no real scouting system in a lot of respects. He says this great thing where he says, I think the greater population of Greater Manchester, is something like 6 million and they've got 2 scouts.
That's interesting. You can understand, on the field of play, teams will come and teams will go. Standards will drop.
Yeah.
I didn't know the infrastructure was collapsed as well at Old Trafford. That's interesting.
The whole infrastructure collapsed. It's nothing like the club that he left. It's nothing like the club of 20 years before that won European Cups and titles under Busby. It's kind of like, it's almost like an beautiful old manor house that's gone a little bit to
Quite right, that's right. They're all living in 2 rooms.
Yes, that's exactly it.
The rest of it is now just deteriorating. Miss Havisham's in one of the rooms on her own in her old wedding dress. But other than that,
it's a place that really has sort of become run down and dilapidated, really. But he's got something there that's hugely important to him, and I think he now talks about it quite a lot. Bobby Charlton is there. And Bobby Charlton has wanted him there. And Bobby Charlton is going to back him to the hilt.
And Bobby Charlton's a bit Man United, isn't he?
He is Mr. Manchester United. So Matt Busby's there, but he's getting older. He's got a little office still and he's got his pipe. But there's nothing like...
That's really interesting.
What Bobby Charlton means to him.
So he's championing the cause for Ferguson and that gets him in there, yeah?
That gets him in there. And next we're going to talk about what happens then at Manchester United.
Oh, because this is a relatively big part of the Sir Alex Ferguson story. And of course, you can get to it by subscribing to our YouTube channel, to our podcast, and you do it all for nothing, can't you, John?
You can.